Picture a quiet morning that promised absolutely nothing. The sky, blanketed in a heavy quilt of gray clouds, seemed to mirror the weight on the shoulders of those rising early for another routine day. The streets were still damp from last. Night's rain and silence reigned, broken only by the occasional splash of tires brushing puddles on the sidewalk. Chris, a 19-year-old black teenager, rode his bike slowly. It was an old bike. The chain creaked with every turn, and the seat was patched up with duct tape. But that wasn't what bothered him. In fact, he rarely complained about anything. In his eyes lived a stubborn mix of endurance and hope, the kind you find in people life has hit hard, but who refuse to stop dreaming. Most people, when they passed him on the street, saw nothing more than a poor kid in worn-out clothes. They didn't see the weight he carried. They didn't know he woke up before sunrise to work at a tire repair shop and still found the strength to attend night classes. But life is like that. Most people only see what they want. And those who choose to look deeper, they're the ones who find opportunity where others see only obstacles. Now listen carefully, because this is where the story begins to shift. Pulled over on the side of the road, with hazard lights blinking, sat a car that looked like it belonged. In a magazine ad, a sleek black sedan, still gleaming beneath the gray sky. But one tire had blown out completely, shredded by some piece of hidden metal lurking in the asphalt. Inside was a middle-aged white man in an expensive suit, gesturing in frustration. Luxury watch, polished shoes, but clearly lost. His phone had no signal. No cars were passing. No solution in sight. Chris noticed the scene from a distance. He could have kept riding. Could have pretended he didn't see it. After all, how many times had he needed help and no one stopped? But that's where greatness begins. It's where real leaders are forged. It's how destiny shifts course. Chris stopped, took a deep breath, and chose to help. You know why? Because he wasn't helping out of interest. He wasn't hoping for a reward. He was helping because that's how the future is built, brick by brick, action by action, choice by choice. And maybe that's the first lesson you need to carry if you want to change your life. Who you are when no one's watching is who you really are. Chris approached the car calmly. The man looked up, clearly irritated and suspicious. He was expecting anything, but not a stranger offering help without a catch. Need a hand, sir? That was it, a simple question, but asked with kindness, with sincerity, and in that moment, without even knowing it, Chris tipped over the first domino in a long chain of events. That moment, on the side of an ordinary road, would become the turning point, not just in his life, but in the lives of many others around him. Some moments in life seem small, but they carry quiet revolutions within them. When Chris parked his bike at the side of the road and knelt beside the damaged tire, he wasn't just trying to fix a mechanical problem. He was, unknowingly, opening a portal between two completely different universes. On his side, a world of overdue bills, carefully counted groceries, packed buses, and stubborn faith. On the other, the universe of Mark Ellington, a real estate mogul, private helicopters, and dinners with linen napkins. But right then, Mark wasn't a businessman. He was just a frustrated man. And when he looked at this skinny kid with grease-stained hands and an honest smile, he saw something money had never shown him. True selflessness. Chris didn't say much, only what was necessary. Focused on the task, he said, "Some metal shard tore the sidewall. I'll do what I can so you can make it to a gas station." Mark, unaccustomed to generosity without strings, instinctively reached for his wallet. "I'll pay you. Just please be quick." But the answer hit like a breath of fresh air. "I'm not doing it for the money. Now listen, if you've ever dealt with wealthy, powerful people, you know how rare a response like that is. It's almost urban legend." Mark stood frozen, unsure what to make of it. Not because he lacked cash, but because he had no emotional reference for pure generosity. Chris continued working. with old tools borrowed from life itself, a patched-up bike pump, a repair kit his grandfather had left him before passing. That same grandfather who used to say, "It's not what's in your hands that solves the problem, it's what's in your heart." And Mark? He just watched. Every gesture, every word, every silence. For the first time in years, he was learning from someone the world usually overlooks. When everything was ready, Chris stood, wiped his hands on his jeans, and gave 2 light taps on the hood. "You're good to go. Should hold till the next station. But get that tire replaced later, okay?" Mark, still unsure how to respond, pulled out a crisp $100 bill and held it out. Chris looked at it, smiled, and shook his head. "No, just pay it forward someday. This is where you need to pause and really reflect, because sometimes opportunity doesn't arrive in an envelope or in a bolded subject line in your inbox. Sometimes it hides inside your own gesture, inside a choice." Mark, stunned, reached for the only thing he could offer. He pulled out a business card, embossed logo shining in silver foil. "If you ever want to get out of that tire shop, call me." Chris held that card like it was a gem. Not because he expected a miracle, but because, for the first time, someone had offered him a door. And when you come from where Chris came from, a door can mean the entire world. Have you ever experienced something so small, so ordinary to others, that it lit a spark inside you? Something most would brush off, but to you, it felt like the beginning of something? That's exactly what happened to Chris. After that day, on the roadside, he went back to his routine. Same tire shop, same grease-covered hands, same clunky tools. But inside him, something had changed. Hope. Not the naive kind that waits for someone to swoop in and rescue you, but the mature kind, rooted in action, the kind that whispers, "Maybe, just maybe, you're closer to a new chance than you think." Every night before bed, Chris would take out Mark's business card and look at it. He'd run his fingers gently over the embossed letters like he was trying to memorize the name of a street he needed to find someday. But he didn't call. Not yet. Not out of fear of rejection, but out of respect for the gesture. And here's where most people mess up. Most in Chris's shoes would have called that same day, would have demanded something, expected an instant payoff. But Chris understood, maybe through intuition, maybe through inherited wisdom, that when you rush ahead of the right time, you stumble. So he waited, until life decided to speed things up. A few weeks later, the owner of the tire shop gathered the team. His voice was heavy. "We're shutting down. I tried everything. I'm sorry." Chris listened in silence. Didn't protest. Didn't beg. Just swallowed hard, nodded, and thanked him. Then walked home in a soft drizzle that matched the moment perfectly, backpack soaked, jeans clinging to his legs, steps steady. But inside, chaos. Rent was due. His mom needed her medication. His younger brother had asked for a new pair of shoes for school, and now he had to walk through the door and explain that the ground had disappeared beneath their feet. And this is the moment where true leaders reveal themselves. Not when things are easy, but when the world falls apart and you still choose to stand tall. That night, with trembling hands and a pounding heart, Chris took a deep breath and dialed. The card was on his nightstand, the number memorized. Mark Ellington. The voice was firm, direct. Chris swallowed. "Chris. Hi. This is Chris, from the roadside. Your flat tire." There was a brief silence, then something completely unexpected. "Chris, I've been waiting for your call." That sentence. It was worth more than any paycheck. The next day, there he was, standing in front of a high-rise building that reached into the sky. He had never been anywhere like it, not even in pictures. His shoes echoed on the marble floor. The rented suit itched, but he didn't shrink. Mark greeted him with a firm, sincere smile. "No one starts at the top here, Chris. But character goes far. You proved yours without saying a word." And just like that, no big speech, no dramatic moment, a new journey began. Chris didn't land a promotion. He didn't become an executive. He didn't get a golden name badge. He got something far more valuable, a chance to prove himself. And that's something you need to understand right now. Opportunity isn't a reward. It's a path, and you still have to walk it, with thirst, with pain, with discipline, but it's worth it. Always worth it. Most people wait to be noticed before they give their best. Chris did the opposite. He gave his best, especially when no one was watching. That's why he started in the basement. But fate was already sketching the top floor for him. His position? Simple. Maintenance assistant. Nothing glamorous, cleaning gutters, checking elevators, unclogging sinks, the kind of job most people don't notice, but what others ignored. Chris observed with near-sacred attention. He arrived early. Really early. Stayed late. Never complained. Never asked for time off. Never said, "That's not my job." And the most remarkable part? He paid attention. While changing light bulbs, he listened to hallway meetings. While fixing vents, he read papers executives left behind, charts he didn't understand yet, but knew he would one day. Now listen. As your mentor in this story, I need to tell you something clearly. Those who learn in silence surprise the world in noise. Chris began attending the company's internal workshops, even exhausted, even as the only maintenance worker in the room. He sat in the back, pen in hand, eyes hungry for knowledge, and, of course, people noticed. Mark noticed, not with favoritism, but with curiosity. The kid from the roadside, some whispered. Always present, always listening, always going beyond what was expected, but still. No spotlights, no press, no applause, until the storm. Lightning carved up the sky. One of those nights that kills the lights and tests the systems, and that's exactly what happened. A power surge shut down 2 entire floors. Elevators stuck, security systems offline. It was night. The engineers had all gone home, but Chris? Still there, in the basement, as always. And that's when life whispered, "It's your turn." He didn't hesitate. He ran to the electrical room, took a deep breath, remembered every workshop, every tip from his grandfather, every detail learned in the shadows. In 20 minutes, he did what an entire team would have taken hours to do, isolated the issue, reconnected the circuits, and brought the heart of the company back to life. No selfies, no announcements, no, "Look what I just did." The next morning, the building buzzed. Chris was summoned to the top floor. He'd never been up there. Glass. Walls. Expensive suits. But that day, the kid from maintenance stood in the center. Mark looked at him with something new in his eyes. "Do you know what leadership is, Chris?" Chris shook his head shyly. "It's doing the right thing, when no one asks, when no one sees, and when no one's going to clap. You didn't just save our systems last night. You saved our reputation." And at that moment, the shift began. Chris got a new role, a new desk, and more than that, a name. People stopped saying "the maintenance guy" and started saying "Chris." But he stayed the same, still rode the same bus, still visited his mom every Sunday, still smiled at the security guard each morning, because those who truly rise never forget the ground that lifted them. Have you noticed how life sometimes sets up its own tests? It waits for the right moment, waits until no one's looking, then suddenly throws you into a storm, just to see what you're made of. That's exactly what happened to Chris. After the promotion, he didn't become a celebrity overnight. There were no newspaper headlines, no viral LinkedIn posts. Everything remained quiet, just the way his life had always been. But slowly, he began to stand out. Not because he was loud, but because he delivered. As maintenance coordinator, he led a small team, still fixed things himself when needed, still rolled up his sleeves, but he also did something more. He studied. He learned. He started to build. He began attending internal finance courses, took notes on technical terms, bought secondhand books on facility engineering, signed up for a nighttime online class, paid from his own pocket, and whenever he had a question, he asked, even if it meant walking into the CFO's office. Some laughed, others rolled their eyes, but one or two helped, and that was enough, because what Chris was doing was rare. He was planting roots in a place where most people only expect you to trim weeds. Then came the second storm, not a literal one like before, but internal. 3 years had passed. Chris had stability, a decent salary, a used car. His mother was living in a safer neighborhood. Life was finally beginning to smile, but life rarely smiles for free. Mark Ellington disappeared from the office. At first, it was just rumors. Then came the truth: liver cancer, terminal. The news hit like a bomb through the mirrored building. Some whispered prayers. Others started planning for succession. Chris said nothing. Until one day, he was called into Mark's private office, entered with the same respect he always had. But this time, Mark wasn't the business titan anymore. He was thinner, pale, tired, calm. He pointed to the chair across from him. "Chris, remember the day we met?" "Yes, sir." "The flat tire." Mark chuckled softly and coughed. "You changed more than a tire that day, son. You changed the way I see the world." Chris tried not to crumble. Mark spoke slowly, every word like concrete. "This company needs someone who understands real life, who understands people. Someone who doesn't just talk about values, but lives them. I want you to be part of my succession." Chris froze. "But sir, I'm just—" Mark raised a finger. "You are everything this company needs. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Now hear this clearly. This is the kind of moment where most people back down. Because accepting a gift that big is terrifying. It requires responsibility. It demands presence. And it means that from now on, you're not just carrying your own story, you're carrying the weight of all the stories that never got told." Chris left that office with the world on his shoulders. The news leaked, the company split, executives whispered. Investors frowned. Some called it a publicity stunt, others a reckless move. But Chris, he said nothing. Instead, he looked for his mother, his old teacher, his own silences. Then, after thinking, remembering, and breathing deep, he made his decision. He accepted, not to prove a point, but to honor everything he had lived. Every great story reaches a moment not where the hero must choose between right and wrong, but between who the world says they are and who they know they are. After the announcement, the whole building felt different. Elevators moved slower, hallways stretched longer. The glances grew heavier. Chris was now at the center of attention, but not the kind anyone dreams of. What he faced wasn't a technical challenge. It was a test of identity. Executives held secret meetings, spreadsheets circulated with his name, in red. Fake smiles appeared in the break room. Emails floated around with words like inexperience, recklessness, and company image. He heard it all, and still. Every day, he arrived before 8. But inside, a hurricane. The truth is, Chris stood before the greatest decision of his life. Step back and keep the peace, or step forward and honor everything he believed in. It was a battle between the fear of not being accepted and the responsibility of being the first. And here's something you need to understand. The greatest power of a leader is remembering who they were before anyone called them leader. Chris spent weeks listening to advice. Some told him to lay low, others said, maybe wait a little longer. But then came one night. a quiet one. He drove to the old road, the place where it all began, pulled over, got out, just him, the wind, the cracked asphalt, and the memory, the bike, the flat tire, the choice. And there, with no audience, no spotlight, no validation, he made his decision. He wouldn't take the position to prove something. He'd take it, to transform everything, to transform the way companies view talent, to transform what's possible for people from the margins, to transform what success really means. The next week, he gathered every executive in one room. He didn't bring a PowerPoint. He didn't quote numbers. He didn't show trends or benchmarks. He told his story, with truth, with humility, with the weight of someone who had lived every word. And then he said, with a steady voice, "I'm not here to fit in. I'm here to make room. And if anyone thinks that's not enough, look around. Look at how much we can grow when we learn to respect the ones who build, not just the ones who give the orders." Some lowered their eyes, others stood and clapped. But the most important part, Chris remained whole. He didn't sell out. He didn't water himself down. He didn't bend. He simply was who he had always been. And because of that, he changed everything. Chris didn't become CEO overnight, and that was intentional. He didn't want change to be symbolic. He wanted it to be structural. He started by listening, one by one, from the janitor to the vice president. He walked into meetings like a visitor in a new world, humble heart, notebook in hand, because he knew true leadership is built from the ground up. Soon the changes began. Quietly, without press releases, no cosmetic makeovers. Chris went for the roots. He simplified internal processes, created open listening channels for frontline workers, established new rituals, not just to reward results, but to recognize character and initiative. But the real shift came with what he called the Pathway Project, a scholarship and internship program for young people from under-resourced communities, aimed at those interested in engineering, business, or construction. The difference? Each student was paired with a mentor inside the company, not a celebrity speaker, but someone who, like Chris, had once been invisible. He personally visited schools, talked to principals, spoke to students not as a success story, but as someone who still remembered the taste of rain on the walk home. And slowly, the numbers changed. Productivity went up. Turnover dropped. Company culture grew stronger, and for the first time, executives began to say, "We work at Chris's company, not Mark's, but Chris." He always corrected them. "This company isn't mine. It belongs to anyone who believes character is the most valuable capital." 6 months later, Mark Ellington passed away. Chris was one of the pallbearers, one of the few who didn't cry with his eyes, but with his chest, because he knew that the man who once was just a name on a shiny card had become family at the eye. Memorial. Chris stepped up to the podium. In his hand, he held the same business card he'd carried all those years. He raised it slowly. This wasn't a contract. It was a gesture. It was a chance. It was a reminder that sometimes all someone needs is for a door to open. There was silence, not a single clap. People were too moved to respond. Then they stood, and the room erupted. In that moment, the legacy was sealed. Some leaders get lost at the top. Others return to their roots, to remember who they are, despite the new title, new meetings, new responsibilities. Chris never disconnected from what shaped him. He still woke up early, still visited his mother every Sunday, still shined his own shoes, and once a month, he did something no one knew about, something that wasn't in any press release, not in any performance report, not even in the board minutes. He drove to the edge of town, where the grass grew wild, where the pavement was scarred and sun-worn, where the silence was thicker than any boardroom. He'd pull over, step out of the car, breathe in deep, and walk to the exact spot where, years ago, his life had changed forever. that forgotten piece of road. It was sacred to him. There, he remembered everything. The ripped jeans, the duct-taped bike, the grease-stained hands, and above all else, the decision. The decision to stop, to care, to help. He stood there for minutes, staring at the asphalt like it was a mirror, because deep down he knew. It wasn't luck. It wasn't a miracle. It wasn't fate. It was a choice to pull over, a choice to see someone in need, a choice to hold on to his values, instead of selling them for scraps of validation. And that is real power. The power to know that you can change everything by beginning with a single, selfless gesture. Chris would return to the car with calm eyes. No need for anything else, because he knew he already had everything, a legacy, a story, and a purpose. And if anyone someday were to ask him how it all began, he would know exactly what to say, with a flat tire and the choice to stop.